Welcome back. Today's explainer dives into a truly fascinating intersection of ancient traditions. We're going to unpack a highly structured, super respectful response by WSCM Kiran Paul to criticisms raised by a religious figure named Radha Manoharam Das. What makes this source material so incredibly compelling is how it attempts to build a real bridge between deep-rooted Indian spiritual heritage and the narrative of a universal savior. It's all about aiming for logical harmony rather than division. Now, to really understand this bridge, we've got to start with one of the most profound cries of the human heart, Asato Masadgamya. You might have heard it before. It's an ancient, absolutely universal Indian prayer. According to our sources, this chant is a foundational teaching of the country, expressing a shared, deep-seated human longing for divine guidance.
Let's break down the three pillars of this incredible prayer, all right? It essentially asks to be led from untruth to truth, from darkness into light, and finally, from the darkness of death to the gift of life. The source material argues that humanity's search for an ultimate answer is perfectly met by the Savior who historically declared, "I am the truth, I am the light, I am the life." The speaker presents this specific Savior as the direct, divine response to that very ancient cry.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here is our agenda. 1. The cry for truth. 2. A universal son born. 3. Burden of inherited sin. 4. Prophecy of Ajamya the Yagna. 5. Humble rebuttals. And 6. True Dharma. Section 1. The cry for truth. The speaker highlights a really fascinating dynamic here, contrasting the ancestral search, that deep prayer for truth and light, with what is presented as the divine response. WCM Kiran Paul argues that the creator of the universe, who existed before all creation, chose to specifically answer this call by descending to Earth in human form roughly 2,000 years ago. So it's presented not as some foreign concept, but literally as the fulfillment of a universal human need. Section 2. A universal son born. Now here is where things get really interesting. Have you ever heard the term Bhuma Jopuram? Our sources define this as the center, or the navel of the Earth. The speaker uses this concept to address the criticism that this savior was just a foreign deity. By arriving at the very center of the Earth, the source argues, this figure was perfectly positioned for all of humanity, not just one specific region or isolated tribe. There's a massive contrast to consider here between a national god and a universal one. A national god belongs to one specific territory, but the source describes the savior as sunborn. Think about it. Just as the sun provides light to the entire world without belonging to a single country, the Savior's arrival at the Earth Center, Bhuma Japuram, proves his mission was designed for the entire Earth. According to the speaker, this aligns perfectly with Vedic descriptions of a universal light. Section 3. Burden of inherited sin. Our sources point out that the ancient Indian rishis actually had a profound understanding of the human condition. They spoke of swabhava papam, which is an inherent sinful nature that rules over us from the very moment we're born. The speaker even cites the Rig Veda, specifically a prayer to the deity Varuna, asking for release from the betrayal inherited from fathers. So the crucial takeaway here is that humans are born with these birth and karma sins that we simply can't escape on our own. We desperately needed external divine intervention. Section 4. Prophecy of Ajamida Yajnar. Let's see how this builds, because I gotta tell you, the details here are staggering. The sources describe the Ajameda Yagna as a prophetic Vedic ritual with very specific steps. First, a firstborn is selected and dressed in silk. Then, the subject is stripped and tortured. It's placed on a wooden board, pierced with nails, crowned with thorns, and its blood is completely drained without breaking a single bone. The speaker points out that these intense symbolic steps parallel the historical crucifixion of the Savior, presenting it as the stunning fulfillment of ancient Indian prophecy. But wait, there is a massive condition attached to this ritual, and it leads us to an engaging question. What exactly is the consumption clause? According to the rule, the Niyaman, of the Ajameda Yajna, the sacrificed subject actually has to live again. If it doesn't resurrect, those who killed it must consume it before sunset, treating it as just a standard, everyday offering. Therefore, the requirement to live again is the ultimate proof. Conquering death is the exact thing that identifies the true savior of humanity, fulfilling that ancient prayer to be led from death to life. Section 5. Humble rebuttals. Moving on to answering the critics, one major critique raised was about wealth. The critic basically asked, if this is a true supreme deity, Why on earth would he choose to appear on earth as poor and lacking in material richness?
Well, the speaker addresses this head-on by pointing out that the deity had to become empty. The term used is rikthudai. He had to become empty specifically to serve as a sacrifice for human sins. You see, you can't be a sacrifice if you arrive in unapproachable majesty. To make this relatable, the speaker compares this to Lord Shiva, who is famously associated with ashes and cremation grounds, arguing that true divinity just isn't defined by earthly wealth. The Savior's true, unmeasurable richness is only glimpsed later, in things like the visions of Revelation.
But what about sorrow? Critics also mocked the idea of a quote-unquote crying God. How could a supreme being experience sorrow or actually shed tears? The speaker tackles this beautifully by looking at dharma, or divine duties. When a deity takes human form, experiencing human emotion is a required duty. Just as Lord Rama is revered despite shedding tears multiple times in the Ramayana, the Savior's tears are an expression of operating within the physical and emotional realities of human life. It's definitely not a weakness. It is the purposeful, intentional embrace of the human condition to complete a divine mission. And that brings us to the mystery of the 3 nails. The critic literally mocked the Savior for not being strong enough to just pull the nails out of the cross. But WCM Kieran Paul clarifies that refusing to pull out the nails wasn't a lack of power at all. It was a profound act of voluntary, selfless love. If he had pulled them out, the ritual of the Ajamitha Yajna would be incomplete, and humanity would perish under the heavy weight of its inherent sin. He stayed on the cross to save us, not because he was trapped there. Section 6. True Dharma and Harmony. So this all builds to a crucial point, how we define true Dharma. The speaker argues it means sharing the truth in love, fulfilling human duties, and coming to know the Creator without animosity. In fact, WCM Kieran Powell establishes a platform of mission coordination, termed in Telugu as Mission Samandhyotha. The entire goal of this platform is to ensure people can exercise their right to preach their religion in total harmony. It's about examining the evidence logically, with humility and meekness, rather than just tearing down and criticizing other spiritual beliefs. Don't change your religion, just know the truth. This quote absolutely nails the core message of the source material. The emphasis here is entirely on seeking logical, scriptural truth harmoniously. The speaker isn't demanding cultural conversion. Rather, they're inviting viewers to recognize the universal creator who answered those very ancient Vedic prayers for truth, light, and life. Which leaves us with a pretty profound question to reflect on. How can we seek universal truths across our own cultural boundaries, using meekness and logical evidence instead of animosity? This explainer really shows that when we look closely, the ancient prayers of one tradition might just find their perfect echo in the historical sacrifices of another. Thank you so much for joining me on this structured journey through the source material. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll see you in the next explainer.